and they've got me kind of like four way, not like blocked in, but they're 20, 50 feet apart, completely surrounded. And the cops get out, they've got their guns. One of the guys got like tack gear kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, this is not a usual shakedown. I didn't do anything. Years ago, I had this BMW X5, which I had mentioned in a different story that I ended up eBaying to a guy in Kazakhstan. But I bought it to be a road trip car. And for that, it was fantastic. It was great on every surface. It was pretty fast. It was pretty quiet. It was great on gravel roads and snow and everywhere else. And had a good time. And wife at the time and I were driving it up the East Coast just to. I had this thing for a while, kind of before I was doing Cannonball. I love to do these sort of superlatives, or like I wanted to drive like corner to corner, or coast to coast, or north to south. Or I had this thing for a while. I drove the entire coastline of America from Canada to Mexico on both coasts. Just things I like to just hit all the little high points. So we were on the way up for the drive the East Coast of the United States from Maine all the way to around to Brownsville, Texas. So we're going up, and we were in Connecticut, and it just stopped at your typical, services off the side of the road, and so I think she was gonna like make us some sandwiches out of the picnic stuff in the back, and I went in to use the restroom or whatever. And as I'm coming back in the kind of a crowded parking lot, I noticed there was like a white van kind of parked adjacent to where the X5 was parked, and I see wife at the time, and she's kind of looking. She kind of sees me. I mean, this is 150 yards across the parking lot. She sees me, and she's like, "Hey, honey!" And she was not a real like, "Hey, honey" kind of girl. I was usually in trouble for something, or not getting talking to, or getting the silent treatment. So that was very unusual behavior from her. So I'm like, "Okay, something's up." And I carry a gun on me, so I just kind of picked up my pace and got a little closer. And as I get closer, there's a van with two guys kind of talking to her through the van. And they see me coming, so they drive away, and nothing happened. So I get in the car and I was like, you okay? And she's like, yeah, there's just guys just rolled up and they were just kind of asking me like where we were staying, if I was traveling by myself, just kind of creepy questions and all that. Yeah, it's kind of creepy, yeah, especially with the van, there was kind of a cliche, and this is 20 plus years ago. We get on the road and we make it all up into Massachusetts somewhere. We're staying in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And we're watching the news that night, and the dudes were on the news. Like, it was like they were like a serial killer. Like, it was like a duo who had been like abducting women and doing horrible things and like kidnapping them in the van. And we were like, holy crap, So, we're out there. There was a trucker convention at the place, and it's kind of real loud, and I can't get any cell signal. So I go outside, and I'm kind of waiting for the trucks to get a little quiet. And I finally get a cell signal in. I was like, hey, these guys on the news in this white van. I didn't get a license plate, but here's a description. It's a Chevy van, blah blah blah, missing the hubcap, et cetera, et cetera. And the lady's like, yeah, we've already gotten several calls. They're in that area, but your call's been documented. But we've been made aware of that. So I go back inside, and I said, I called, and sure enough, like other people saw those guys. Like they talked to several people, and wow, that was like real serial killers, like in the serial killer van. Like what a coincidence. And so we went on our trip, but just years later, even though I was thinking about it, and even after wife at the time and I parted ways, I think about that every now and then, and just thinking like, man, if I hadn't come back when I did, I might still have my hot tub. So even though I may not be good at recognizing a serial killer, I found myself being accused of being one not too long after. Wife at the time and I parted ways, and I was with a new, about to be wife at the time, on a trip to Florida, and this is what happened. I'm down in Daytona, Florida. It's not bike week. I'm just down there hanging out. And I've got a friend that lives about an hour west of there towards Orlando. So my different wife at the time, she's back at the condo. She's going to take a nice night. She's chilling out. So I hop on my motorcycle and I shoot over towards Orlando where my friend lives. Have a good time with him. It gets late. We're just doing the things we usually do, hang out. He's big into guns. He has a bunch of suppressed pistols. So we're out standing in his front yard shooting his girlfriend's flower pots with suppressor pistols at 2 in the morning, as you do. So we have a big night. We go out, have some fun. It's getting late. It's 3 in the morning at this point. I probably need to be getting back. So I get on my bike and I ride back towards Daytona. Unlike your typical Florida motorcycle rider, no helmet, t-shirt, whatever. I mean, I dress for the crash, not for the ride. I wear a full face helmet. I got a jacket, I got gloves, and I wear proper safety gear. As I'm riding back into Daytona, again, it's the middle of the night. It's off season. It's some Tuesday night. Nothing going on. All of a sudden, I go past the parking lot and I see a couple of cop cars in the parking lot. I'm not even speeding, so I'm just cruising in. Well, they whip out behind me pretty fast, and the blue lights come on. I'm like, okay, I didn't do anything tonight, but sure. So I pull over. As I pull over, they both kind of like, I'm kind of in the middle of a parking lot. They both kind of kind of pull in from the side, and they just sit there for a minute, and they're like, on the PA, they're like, driver, take the keys from the bike, and it's a Harleys have like a proximity key, so they're not like a key in the bike, but I've just got it in my pocket. So I'm like, okay. So I take the key out and I kind of, set it on the ground. I don't want to chip the little key thing. So I set it on the ground and they wait, and two more cops show up. And they've got me kind of like four, not like blocked in, but they're 20, 50 feet apart, completely surrounded. And the cops get out, they've got their guns. One of the guys got like tack gear kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, this is not a usual shakedown. I didn't do anything. So of course I take my helmet off when I get pulled over. It just kind of smooths things out on a motorcycle. So as soon as I get pulled over, the helmet's off, bike's off, etc. So they're like, get off the bike. The typical down on one knee, down the other knee, hands behind your head, lay down on the ground, like full felony stop thing. They come over, they handcuff me, they stand me up, and again, I've done this enough times. Like there's a time for me asking questions, but this is not the time when people have guns drawn and tasers out. So I just wait for my turn, and they're like, who you riding with? And I'm like, I went to see my buddy in Orlando. I'm going back to the condominium. No, no, who you riding with? I'm like, it's just me. Like, it's just me. What club you in? I'm like, I'm not club, man. I'm not into that kind of stuff. Well, you sure look like you are. I'm like, I've got like a Dukes of Hazzard t-shirt and a leather jacket on. I'm not like patched up or some Hell's Angel thing or anything like that. And the Mongols kind of run that area anyway, Seminole County. So they're just like super tweaky. They're like, what you got in the butt? Where's your gun? Where's your gun? I'm like, hey, I've got a Georgia concealed carry permit. It's reciprocal to Florida. It's in my back pocket. You can check it if you want to, like we're square. So they kind of give me the shakedown, and it's pretty obvious that I mean my paperwork's straight. I got no warrants, the license is clean, whatever. And finally, I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, we have a lot of biker activity down here. And this is like, I'm like uncuffed at this point. We've all relaxed and everything, And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, we have a lot of biker activity down here. And when one group's going to do a hit on somebody else, they usually have a guy come in from a chapter in another state, like Georgia, an adjoining state where you're from. And to hide their faces, like nobody in Florida wears a helmet. We see you with a full face helmet with a dark visor and a full jacket. You're not wearing a cut or anything. Like you look like a biker from another chapter coming to kill somebody down here. So naturally, we're pretty suspicious. And I'm just like, nah, man, I'm just trying to get home before my girlfriend wakes up. What's the deal? And they were cool with it after that, but they at the time just decided that I must have been some sort of biker gang hitman simply because of the fact I was wearing a helmet in Florida.
Successful car purchasing is all about knowing your buying power and being able to move quickly. And the best way to do that is getting pre-qualified with Premier Financial Services. Call one of these numbers, speak to one of their representatives, fill out their application, and then you'll know exactly how much car you can buy. You'll approach a seller, tell them you're already qualified, you've got your simple lease set up from Premier Financial, and you'll be able to close very, very quickly. That's why Premier is one of the most powerful partners in the world of exotic car financing, and that's why I turn to them every time I go out and try to buy something crazy.